My name is David Carter. I am 32 years old and work as a financial analyst in Chicago. About 6 years ago, I believed I had met the woman I would spend my life with. Her name was Emily Reed, and she came from what you might call an upper-middle-class family that owned a thriving Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park. Looking back now, the warning signs were always present. I simply chose to overlook them because I was deeply in love. Emily's parents, Tom and Susan Reed, were the kind of people who loved to flaunt their success. They mocked others with an air of superiority, frequently made cutting remarks about everything, and never once expressed genuine gratitude for what my mother had done for them years ago. Let me share something about my mother, Mary Carter. She was truly remarkable. Back in 2018, when the Reed family restaurant was on the brink of collapse due to poor investments and an economic downturn, it was my mother who refused to stand by. She co-signed a bank loan of $70,000 that saved their business. That was not all. She also purchased a new industrial oven worth $15,000 using her own retirement funds. Furthermore, when Emily's younger brother aimed to attend Northwestern University, my mother discreetly paid his tuition for the senior year, which totaled $28,000. All of this is documented. I have every receipt, each bank statement, every email exchange. My mother kept impeccable records because she was the kind of person who was organized, meticulous, and honest beyond measure. If you are fascinated by tales of ruthless revenge and compelling plot surprises, please like this video and subscribe to the channel right now. Every day, fresh, never-before-seen stories appear here, each one more thrilling than the previous. Now, here is what truly upset me deeply. Although my mother did so much for the Reeds, she never received any recognition. No gratitude, no mention of her assistance at family gatherings. Absolutely nothing. It felt as though her efforts were completely wiped from their memories, and they convinced themselves they had succeeded solely through their own efforts. I always thought this was unfair, yet I did not want to cause any disputes. I loved Emily, and I told myself that her parents' attitude was their issue, not ours. I even pushed down my own feelings when Emily rejected the idea of including a brief homage to my mother during our wedding ceremony. Mom had died from cancer just 8 months earlier, and I believed this would be a lovely way to honor her legacy. However, Emily said it would bring too much sadness to what was meant to be our joyful occasion. I should have realized that was a sign of trouble ahead. Yet love makes one blind at times, and I was definitely unaware of what awaited. The rehearsal dinner took place at the Reed family's restaurant, their pride and joy that my mother had quite literally rescued from financial ruin. About 60 guests attended, including both families, the wedding party, and close friends. Tom Reed, Emily's father, took the microphone after the main dish to deliver what everyone believed would be a... David Carter began his speech about his daughter with the usual expressions of pride. He talked about how stunning Emily looked, and how thrilled everyone was for the wedding. It was the typical speech expected from the father of the bride. The crowd smiled warmly, raised their glasses, and the atmosphere was joyful and festive. Then he said something that shattered the mood completely. You see, David spoke with a familiar tone of superiority. Emily has always been sharp when it comes to people. She recognizes those who try to buy influence and importance. He paused and chuckled softly. Like when certain individuals claim they've supported your business, but in truth, they merely falsified a loan application just to feel important. Luckily, we have clever accountants who spotted the fraud before it caused real damage. The room immediately fell silent, and I felt as if someone had struck me hard in the stomach. Everyone present understood precisely whom he was referring to. My mother. My late mother, who had saved their entire business and never asked for anything in return. Susan Reed, Emily's mother, began laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but an outright laugh as if her husband had just told the funniest joke she had ever heard. Several of their friends joined in, obviously mistaking this for some private family joke. I looked at Emily, hoping she would respond, waiting for her to say something. I felt compelled to defend my mother's honor and to challenge her father's outrageous claim. She remained silent, staring down at her plate, without uttering a single word. I didn't lose my temper or create a scene because that is not who I am. Instead, I carefully folded my napkin, set it on the table, and walked out of the restaurant without a word. I could hear the conversations picking up behind me, likely people wondering what was wrong with the groom. I returned to the hotel where we were staying, the Palmer House Hilton in the city center, needing to make sense of what had just occurred. My mind was swirling with thoughts. However, one thing was absolutely clear. Tom Reed had just, in front of everyone, accused my late mother of fraud. Not only was this untrue, it was the most vile accusation one could imagine. I paced around the hotel room until I realized I had left my phone back at the restaurant. I needed it urgently for several work emails that could not wait until after the honeymoon. So I drove back and used the key Tom had given me a month earlier so I could assist with the wedding setup. I went upstairs to the private dining room where we had been eating and reached for my phone on the table. Then I heard voices coming from Tom's office down the hallway. The door was slightly open, and I could clearly hear Emily Reed speaking with her mother. I moved closer to the doorway, staying hidden in the dimly lit corridor. "Well, at least that settles the whole memorial matter, Susan," she was saying. "Now he simply cannot mention paying tribute to his mother during the ceremony." "Exactly," Emily replied. "I was running out of ways to refuse without sounding cold. Your dad's little joke tonight should finally end all that nonsense." "Your father was exceptional," Susan continued, making it seem as if she were some kind of attention seeker rather than whatever she really was. "The key point is that David understood the message. Emily said that his mother will not be part of our wedding day. This day is about us, not the legacy of a deceased woman." They both laughed, genuinely laughed. I stood frozen in the hallway. It was not just that they accepted Tom's lie, they had planned it. This was not a random cruel joke. It was a deliberate assault on my mother's memory, intended specifically to humiliate me into silence. I grabbed my phone from the table and slipped out through the back door before they realized I had been there. But something inside me had changed. The woman I was about to marry in less than 12 hours had revealed a side I did not know, a side willing not only to let her father disgrace my mother's memory, but to actively take part in the scheme. I returned to the hotel, but could not sleep. Instead, I spent the entire night gathering documents and bank statements, proving my mother's payments to Northwestern University on behalf of Emily's brother. Tuition documents and copies of the loan application, all bearing the signatures of both my mother and Tom Reed, were carefully gathered. I also had email conversations between my mother and Tom about the industrial oven purchase, along with receipts for every item involved. Before retiring, my mother worked as a bookkeeper at a small accounting firm. She meticulously recorded everything, particularly when it came to significant financial deals. She taught me this approach, and I appreciated that valuable lesson. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I had organized everything inside a manila folder, using chronological order, color-coded tabs, and highlighted the essential parts. If the Reeds intended to distort the facts, I was ready to demonstrate what genuine documentation looked like. The wedding brunch was set for 10 o'clock in the morning at the restaurant, with the ceremony planned for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Both families would attend, along with all the guests who had traveled from out of town for the occasion. It was an ideal audience to witness the unfolding events. I dressed in my wedding attire, a charcoal gray suit from Men's Warehouse that had cost me $800. Looking at myself in the mirror, I realized it might be the last time I would wear it. By the end of the day, this suit would symbolize either the greatest error of my life or the most significant moment ever. I arrived at the restaurant right on schedule. Everyone was already there, sipping mimosas and enjoying Eggs Benedict. Emily Reed appeared stunning in a cream-colored dress she had specifically chosen for the brunch. She smiled when our eyes met and gently kissed my cheek, as if nothing unusual had occurred. "Are you feeling better?" she inquired softly. "You left so abruptly last night." I answered, "Much better, actually. I have never been more certain about anything in my life." That moment should have been the sign to be cautious. Yet she simply smiled and returned to her lively conversation with her bridesmaids, discussing final ceremony preparations. I waited patiently until everyone finished eating. Then I stood and politely requested the group's attention. The chatter ceased instantly as all eyes focused on me. Emily was glowing, likely expecting a heartfelt declaration about my excitement to marry her. Tom and Susan also smiled, appearing pleased as if their little act from the previous evening had succeeded. "I want to express my gratitude to all of you for being present today." I started steadily and without hesitation. Having family and friends share in what is supposed to be one of the most significant moments in a person's life means everything. This is a moment built on honesty, respect, and love. I paused, allowing those words to resonate. Nevertheless, I must address an incident from last night, something that has compelled me to rethink everything I believed about the individuals I was about to unite my life with. The bright expression slowly disappeared from Emily's face, replaced by confusion. Tom's features shifted toward worry, and Susan abandoned her sip of orange mimosa halfway. Last night, Tom Reed stood up and delivered what he called a joke about people who falsify loan applications just to feel significant. He was speaking about my mother, Mary Carter, who passed away 8 months ago from cancer. The room immediately fell into complete silence. You could hear the faint clinking of ice and glasses and the distant murmur of traffic from Chicago outside. Tom Reed accused my mother of fraud in front of 60 people, targeting a woman who cannot defend herself because she is no longer here. My tone stayed calm, but I noticed the crowd shifting uneasily in their chairs. Usually, I might have let such a comment slide, perhaps dismissing it as poor taste or a failed attempt at humor. However, I discovered something that changed everything. I reached for the manila folder I had placed next to my plate. After leaving the restaurant last night, I returned to retrieve my phone and accidentally overheard a conversation between Emily Reed and Susan Reed. They congratulated one another on Tom's brilliant joke and laughed about how it would shut down any talk of honoring my mother during today's ceremony. Emily's face turned pale as she said, "David, I think you misunderstood." I interrupted her. "No, I know exactly what you planned. The three of you decided that the best way to deal with my wish to honor my mother was to publicly disgrace her memory by calling her a fraud." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. This is the loan application for $70,000 that saved Reed's restaurant in November 2018. Both signatures appear here, Tom Reed and Mary Carter, my mother. The loan was co-signed by me after 3 other banks had already declined your request. I held the document up to ensure everyone could see it, then placed it on the table and reached for the next paper. This one belongs to my mother. A bank statement showing a $15,000 transfer to Restaurant Supply Depot for your new industrial oven dated December 14th, 2018. Tom suddenly stood up. "David, this is neither the time nor the place. Sit down, Tom." My tone was calm but resolute. "You had your chance to speak last night. Now it is my turn." He sat back down. I brought out another set of documents. These were tuition payment receipts from Northwestern University totaling $28,000 paid by Mary Carter for Daniel Reed's senior year. "That is your son, Tom, Emily's brother." Daniel, who was sitting at the next table with his girlfriend, seemed like he wanted to vanish. "Finally," I said, pulling out a small collection of printed emails. These were exchanges between my mother and Tom regarding all these arrangements. Here is one from December 2018. "Tom, I am glad to assist with the oven payment. Family supports family, and I now consider you part of ours." I glanced around the room. Everyone's gaze shifted between the documents, then to Tom and Susan, and back to me. So, when Tom stood up last night and accused my mother of fraud and forging loan applications, he was not joking. He was lying deliberately and with intent to harm a woman who essentially rescued his family. He approached the business demanding nothing more than simple human respect. Emily was now in tears, but I was far from finished. The most painful part is not even the falsehood itself. It is that my fiancée, the woman I was meant to marry in 4 hours, not only tolerated it, but also took an active role in planning the deception. Because apparently, paying homage to my mother's memory for just half a minute during our ceremony was an unbearable disruption. I closed the folder and fixed my gaze on Emily. I cannot marry someone capable of such behavior. I refuse to join a family that would act like that. Therefore, I am calling off the wedding. The restaurant erupted instantly. Voices overlapped in confusion. Chairs scraped loudly against the floor. An elderly woman asked what on earth was going on. Tom was yelling something about twisting facts, while Susan desperately tried to quiet him down, but it was too late. I noticed many guests pulling out their phones, some recording, others hurriedly sending messages. The video showing me presenting document after document, revealing the Reed family's deceit and lack of gratitude, was going online as it happened. By that night, the collection of clips had surpassed 50,000 views. By morning, the incident was trending on Twitter with the hashtag #WonketTruthBomb. Local news channels in Chicago picked up the story. followed by national morning programs and social media pages with millions of followers. The Reed family scrambled to manage the fallout, but their efforts were already too late. Their restaurant's Google reviews were overwhelmed with one-star ratings and remarks condemning their treatment of the woman who had once saved their business. Tom attempted to post a message on their Facebook page, but the comment section quickly turned into a battleground, filled with accusations of ingratitude and worse. Emily messaged me repeatedly the first week, trying to explain herself, apologize, and convince me to change my mind. Yet, I was resolute. The woman I had fallen in love with 6 years ago either never existed or was lost somewhere along the way, replaced by someone capable of mocking the reputation of a woman who had passed away. 3 months afterwards, I learned from mutual acquaintances that Emily and her parents had sold the restaurant and relocated to Phoenix. It seemed the negative attention made it impossible for them to continue operating in Chicago. The consequences were never something I anticipated or planned for. I believed I would simply state my truth, cancel the wedding, and quietly move forward. I never expected the story to explode across social networks or to spark heated debates among strangers nationwide. But that was exactly what unfolded. The hashtag Wedding Truth Bomb ignited dozens of similar confessions from people who had experienced comparable situations. Individuals shared their own tales of unappreciated in-laws and family members who had unfairly taken credit for others' efforts. The situation involved generosity from others and the nature of relationships, which changed dramatically when someone's true character was finally exposed. What caught my attention most about the reactions was not the anger directed at the Reed family, although there was certainly a lot of that. It was the number of people who shared stories about their own mothers, fathers, grandparents, or friends who had quietly supported others without seeking praise. These were individuals who had guaranteed loans, paid for schooling, covered medical expenses, or simply been there when no one else would. One message that stayed with me came from a woman in Denver whose grandmother had helped a neighbor's family avoid losing their home during the financial crisis of 2008. Later, this neighbor claimed at a community meeting that the grandmother was meddlesome and got involved in matters that were not hers. The woman said, "Seeing my video gave her the strength to finally speak out about what her grandmother had truly done." That moment made me realize something important. This story was not just about me, Emily, or even my mother's memory. It was about something much larger. It involved the essential question of how we treat those who assist us when we are at our most vulnerable. My mother used to say that a person's true character is revealed by how they treat those who can no longer offer them anything in return. People who are ill, elderly, passed away, or no longer useful for their aims. The Reed family had failed that test. I took some time off from work and traveled up to Wisconsin to visit my mother's grave in the small cemetery outside Milwaukee where she spent her childhood. It had been a while since the funeral, and I needed a moment to come to terms with everything that had unfolded. Standing by her headstone, I experienced a feeling I had not encountered since her passing. It was peace, not merely sorrow, anger, or loss, but genuine peace. I spoke to her about what the Reeds had said, about the wedding, the viral video, and all that happened. Then it struck me that she would have approached the situation the very same way I did. Mary Carter did not raise a son who would let falsehoods alter history without opposition. She raised someone who would defend the truth, regardless of how challenging it was, even if it meant sacrificing something he believed he desired. Upon returning to Chicago, I learned that several media outlets wanted to interview me. CNN, Good Morning America, and even some podcasts dedicated to family tales and relationship issues reached out. I declined every one of them. I had expressed all I needed to say, and I was not interested in becoming a professional victim or a celebrity fueled by revenge stories. Instead, I concentrated on moving forward. I found a new apartment in Wicker Park, closer to my workplace and far from any reminders of Emily or her family. I immersed myself in work, accepted freelance financial consulting assignments, and began volunteering at a nearby nonprofit. I assisted small business owners in navigating loan applications and managing their financial strategies. What began as volunteer work turned out to be far more impactful than I had anticipated. I encountered numerous entrepreneurs struggling to keep their ventures alive, often due to confusion over documentation or the inability to find someone willing to co-sign loans. During those encounters, I frequently thought about my mother, recalling how naturally generous she had always been. Around half a year after the wedding that never took place, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Daniel Reed, Emily's brother, whose tuition at Northwestern my mother had covered. He was calling from Phoenix, where his family relocated after selling their restaurant. He said, "I need you to understand that I never knew what your mother did for me. My parents told me they agreed on some sort of payment arrangement with the university. I only discovered Mary's payments after a video became viral, and people began investigating our family's finances." Daniel paused, and I could sense the sincere emotion in his voice as he continued, "I want to repay everything. I have a good job now, and every month I set aside money. It will take some time, but I intend to contribute $28,000 to a scholarship fund in your mother's honor." That call lasted nearly an hour. Daniel explained that moving to Phoenix had not solved all their issues. Tom and Susan Reed were still facing challenges. They were attempting to restore their reputation. Yet the restaurant business is quite intimate, and news spreads rapidly. They face difficulties convincing suppliers to collaborate with them, and multiple prospective partners withdrew after discovering the viral video through simple internet searches. Emily, he mentioned, was employed at a marketing agency and had reverted to her maiden surname after some colleagues identified her from the incident. She had asked Daniel to check if I would be open to speaking with her, but I was uninterested. There was nothing more to discuss. The scholarship fund Daniel spoke of became a reality about 1 year later. The Mary Carter Memorial Scholarship for Business Students was created at Chicago Community College, aimed specifically at those whose families had faced financial struggles. Daniel made the inaugural donation, but in the months that followed, donations started arriving from total strangers who had come across the story and wished to pay tribute to my mother's memory in a positive way. Reflecting now, nearly 2 years onward, I can sincerely say that canceling that wedding was the best choice I ever made. Not because of the fleeting attention or the sense of justice, nor because it revealed the Reed family's true character. It was the correct path because it made me decide between staying comfortable and staying true to my principles. I realized that sometimes the people we hold dear are capable of letting us down in unimaginable ways. Yet, I discovered that standing up for what is right, even when it is tough, and even when it demands a great sacrifice, reveals the true measure of our character. My mother dedicated her entire life to helping others quietly and without seeking any recognition because that was simply who she was. The Reed family attempted to destroy that legacy with falsehoods and ridicule. Ultimately, their efforts to tarnish her memory only made it shine even more brilliantly. If you found this story moving, please like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and click the notification bell so you will be alerted about new stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.